Welcome to a special edition of Beyond the Headlines, Decision 2016. I'm Michael Lenz. On today's show, I'll be joined by Assemblyman Dan Stec, who's seeking re-election in the 114th Assembly District, and his challenger, Green Party candidate Robin Barkenhagen. I'll discuss some of the issues facing the 114th Assembly District with both candidates when we come back.
There is nothing more important in the election process than for you to know where the candidates stand and what they care about. All the political coverage on Look Media is made possible by the generous support of the companies you see here. Please support them.
Welcome back to this special edition of Beyond the Headlines. I'm Michael Lenz. Thanks for joining us for this debate in the race for the Assembly seat in the 114th Assembly District. That seat is currently held by Republican Dan Stec, who's serving his second term. His challenger is Green Party candidate Robin Barkenhagen. Thank you, gentlemen, for agreeing to participate in this debate. This is an Assembly district that encompasses Essex, Warren counties, plus northern parts of Saratoga and Washington counties. I'm going to be asking each of the candidates a series of questions, and after each question, the other candidate will be given an opportunity to respond, and hopefully we can have a thoughtful discussion about the issues facing the 114th Assembly District. So we did a coin toss to start the debate, and Robin won the toss, so we're going to start with you, Robin. As I said, this is a relatively large Assembly district, covers a lot of different areas. Both of you are seeking this office. Dan obviously is seeking re-election. I want to ask each of you to tell the viewers about your backgrounds and qualifications that prepare you for serving in this office.
Well, I don't have a background in politics. I've been active ever since I was young. I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, to a conservative father and a liberal mother in a town where, you know, you're allowed to think for yourself and to come up with your own ideas. So I've always been politically active. I joined the Green Party in 2001, in part to seeing Ralph Nader speak at Skidmore College. Inspired me. He tells everyone should run for office. If you see something wrong, you should run for office and try to do something about it. I wasn't active for many years. As I got married, I started my own business. I bought a house. But after Matt Funicello had a successful run 2 years ago for Congress, he reached out to a bunch of his old former Green friends and said, let's organize and let's get this together. And then when it came to field candidates, I stepped forward and said I would love to run for Assembly again. And so I don't have qualifications, but I don't think you need qualifications to be a true representative of the people. And
just to clarify, you have run for office before?
I did. I ran for Assembly back in 2002 in the five-way race that Teresa Sayward eventually won. And I ran for county supervisor from my ward in Glens Falls, Ward 3 at the time, in 2001 and 2003.
So you have some experience in the trenches.
And yeah, a little bit of experience in the trenches. Things have changed. Social media has made the campaign a lot different. And I would say that back in 2002, I think we had 5 debates, and this is the only one we're having this time. So there are some differences.
Absolutely. So, Assemblyman Stec, tell us about your background.
Well, I was born in Glens Falls, and I grew up in Queensbury. Graduated from Queensbury High School, went to Clarkson University, got a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering. While I was there, I got selected for the Navy's Nuclear Power Scholarship Program, so the Navy helped pay for school. I owed the Navy 5 years. I traveled all over the country. I sailed all over the world operating nuclear reactors on a warship in the Persian Gulf. I owed them 5. I gave them 3 more, though. Went back to school and got an MBA from the University of Rhode Island while I was on shore duty. But then my true love was I wanted to come back home. I came back home. I took a job on Warren Street at Tenneco Packaging. Today it's Pregis. They make foam packaging materials. I was an engineer for them. But I also got involved in local government. I started as a member of the zoning board. Then I ran for town board. I served for 4 years part-time as a councilman in Queensbury. And I tell everyone at that point I started realizing I liked my part-time job more than my full-time job. So I ran for town supervisor. I served for 9 years. I think we did a great job keeping taxes very low. We rebated almost $10 million back to the taxpayers from our surplus, held the line on taxes, kept the town tax at 0 for many years. And then when Teresa Sayward retired a few years ago, I ran for her open seat, and so now I'm finishing my my 4th year in the Assembly, where I've tried to be an outspoken challenger of the status quo down there. There's a lot of things that I think we all agree need changing in Albany, and I've been one of the more outspoken voices on several issues down there. So I'm proud of my service. I've been in the limelight and under the microscope of the public for many years, so I think I'm a known quantity.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, both of you. Let's dive a little deeper into some of the issues that are facing the district. One of the areas where you differ on some of how the perception is or what the reality is public campaign finance. I know, Robin, you have expressed a desire to have more public campaign financing. Dan, your opinion is that you oppose that for various reasons that we'll get into. So Dan, let's start with you. Let's share with our viewers what your position is on public campaign finance. All
right. Well, first, you do have a First Amendment issue there. As far as people want to express support and help a candidate, that's important. But there's a few reasons about the various schemes or suggestions about public finance that at least the legislature in New York has considered in the past that concern me. I think the first thing is it's the use of taxpayer dollars, and a lot of people would object to a communist or a Nazi member, somebody that's truly objectionable getting taxpayer dollars. So that's one issue. It's tax dollars that could go to other uses. But additionally, in New York City, they do have public financing, and anyone that follows the news knows that it hasn't cured New York City of its corruption or ethical woes. So it's not necessarily a panacea to solve the problems. In fact, it encourages a scheme where you have straw candidates and you create races where there aren't races, just so that somebody can go, and in the case of what was proposed in New York that I voted against, a 6-to-1 taxpayer match. But additionally, a lot of estimates for what it could mean in New York. New York City spends $30 million a year on public financing. And they said statewide it could easily be in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, so that is not an insubstantial dollar amount to have to deal with. So, for a variety of reasons, I just public finance. Additionally, ask your family and friends. That's when I got started running as a councilman or supervisor. You ask your family and friends, people that you know. That shows grassroots support. That shows that that you've got the gumption to ask people to get behind you and support you. And so, for all those reasons, I don't think that a public finance option is a good idea.
And I don't know, Robin, you have a slightly different opinion of that.
Well, yeah, I'd like to see the playing field level. I'd like to know that when candidates are running for office, that they're running on the issues and the issues alone. Dan has been in public office for so much longer than me, it is easier for him to raise money. I'm very new at this. Even though I ran back in 2001 to 2003, I wasn't raising any money back then. I raised more money this year, and I'm getting better at it, but I admitted in a most recent Post-Star article that I'm not the best at it, and I need to get better at it. But Maine has a really good system. They're clean election laws, and they get adapted and changed all the time. Basically, you get enough $5 donations and you're into the system, and then once you're into the system, you say you're not going to take anything but the public money. And I think they spend about $3 million a year, not the money. Granted, Maine is a much smaller state than New York. But I think when you talk about the picture as a whole, that we wouldn't have to worry about prosecuting members of our legislature, and that would save us money. I think ultimately having publicly funded elections would save the taxpayers of New York State money. And it would, again, level the playing field so that we could just strictly talk about the issues and win or lose on those issues. And I think that's the best way to go. I'd also like to see free public airtime for ballot qualified candidates, because really that seems like the right thing to do. If you're on the ballot, everyone should have a chance to fair and equal airtime.
Yeah, and I want to drill down a little bit further on that with you, Robin, and you as well, Assemblyman. I know that you had said in the Post-Star article that you kind of thought about reaching out to some friends and family, and you were uncomfortable with that. You weren't able to actually make the call and do that. Now, as Assemblyman Stec had said, look, when you run for office, if you're going to ask taxpayers to publicly fund part of your campaign, don't you have to lead by example in the essence of going out there and actually raising some money on your own? Absolutely.
And, I didn't get to finish my statement on what I was talking about. I made the list. I had attended on a phone seminar with the Greens, and they talked about fundraising and ideas. And I made my list and I made my script. And then I looked down and said, well, what do I need financially to get me through the rest of the race? And I thought at the time I'd had enough money, and that's why I made the decision not to continue on and go through the list. But you're right. I should be, as an active campaigner, going to that list and going to my friends and getting money from them. And I did, I have gotten some donations. It's not like I've gotten none, but I didn't go to that list and I didn't follow through on it. But I think that, again, when we talk about Maine's, the way Maine does it, if you have to get those $5 contributions, that would have been easier for me to do. To call up my friends and even the friends that aren't well off and say, hey, if you give me $5, you're going to help me get free campaign financing down the road. And that would have been a lot easier for me to do than to call up friends and acquaintances and say, you got $100, you got $200. So ultimately, I didn't pull the trigger, and that is my fault, and I will get better at that in the future.
And Assemblyman, when you look at the two campaigns, Robin had approximately, at the time of the article, about $350 in campaign finance compared to your $42,000. So how do we address that as an electorate when we're trying to find candidates who want to come forward and may have difficulty with that for financial reasons? And then those candidates that are more well-established and have achieved the ability to raise significant amount of money, does that preclude good people from being able to seek office?
Well, I mean, that's a fair question, but we talked about ballot qualified, and it's certainly in New York State, to qualify on the ballot, you need to get a certain number of signatures, and that's based on your party's enrollment. So a party that has 300 members in the entire district, that's 15 signatures. A party that has 30,000 members of it in the district, the cutoff is 500. But so should a party that has 300 members be given the level playing field status as a party that has 30,000 members? So I mean, I think that's a fair answer. And if I could also pivot back again to no one likes raising money. It's difficult to ask for money, even your family and friends. It's difficult to ask money. It's not fun and it's not easy, but it's how the system currently works. And if you don't have the ability to ask for the financing from your family and friends, how are you going to stand up on the floor of the Assembly and challenge the Speaker? How are you going to stand up on the floor of the Assembly and challenge the direction that the governor wants to go when it's wrong for your district? I mean, so this is a leadership question as well.
Do you want to respond to that?
I don't think I would have a problem with standing up and fighting the status quo, because that's what I do. Asking for money to me is a totally different thing than asking for support on issues. I definitely don't think I have a problem with standing up and asking for support on the issues. I'd also like to add that because he's an incumbent, there's another unfair advantage, and that comes with these mailers. That we received 5 of these mailers through this campaign season, and these aren't cheap. I can't afford to send out one of these. And if this had come from your campaign, that'd be one thing. That'd be saying, okay, well, you have $42,000, you can afford to send out these mailers. But these are taxpayer-funded mailers, 5 of them, that came since I've announced myself for office. That's excessive to me. An excessive amount of taxpayer money being used for his campaign. So these are within the rules, absolutely. It's 30 days you have?
Well, the Senate is 30 days, the Assembly is 60 days.
60
so there's
days.
a 60-day blockout period on legislative mail.
And I understand that that's the rules we're in right now. It's one of the rules I would like to change. Sure. I would like to see that once I was announced, I think that would be the gentlemanly thing to do, to stop sending these out. Once I was on the ballot, absolutely they should stop coming. Because, again, I can't afford to send these out.
Yep. I don't know if you want to quickly respond to that before we get to another
just,
issue.
just quickly, it is within the rules, and it is a 60-day blockout period, and then they're informative. I mean, they get reviewed by the Assembly majority, so they're not in the habit of throwing any favors to the Assembly minority as far as our messaging. There's rules as to the content and where they go and when they can and can't be sent. But the last one that I sent, the one that came out right at the beginning of September, was about heroin and the addiction problem. And you know what? Whatever the cost of that mailer was, we got a call from somebody because of that mailer saying, we're at wit's end, we're trying to get our family member help. And we've called everywhere. And we saw this and we saw the number on that, and can you help us? And my staff got on and they worked their tail off, and within less than a week, they were able to find a bed for this young guy and get him help. And again, the family was they had already lost one child to drugs, and they were looking at what's going to happen with our second kid.
Sure.
So the mail serves a purpose. And again, it doesn't say vote for Dan Stec, and it's certainly not coming in the month of October. They send it in off election years as well. It's it's communicating with your constituent. You do the best that you can. You work hard to get your word out. You talk to answer the phone when the reporters call, but not every press release makes its way into the newspapers. So mail is an important part of the communication.
And you brought up a point that I think it would be perfect for our next topic, which is not only heroin, but also medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. Another issue that both of you differ on in terms of what you think should be legal. We know that in the state of New York, medical marijuana is now legal. We have a number of facilities that have been up and running now. Robin, I know you have said publicly that you would support having recreational marijuana be approved. Assemblyman, you are opposed to that. I'll give you the first crack.
Well, I'm not exactly sure where my opponent is on the question of just drugs in general. I know that recently, a few days ago, he made a statement saying it was videotaped on his Facebook page that he likes to think outside the box and he thinks we should decriminalize addiction in general. I know that the Green Party candidate for state Senate and the Green Party candidate for Congress have both publicly stated that they're for legalizing all of it, heroin, opiates. So I'm not sure if that's the position that my opponent has taken here, but the medical marijuana bill had been kicking around for many years in Albany, and it wasn't going anywhere in the Senate because it was far too liberal, far too loose, far too ripe for abuse. And I think the governor sat down with the Senate and the legislative leaders in general and said, hey, let's get this over the goal line. They came back. They did it the right way. They had a two-house bill that was supported in both houses. It actually got to the floor for vote on both of them, and I actually voted in favor of the medical marijuana bill that came out because I thought that it had addressed the concerns that my conference has been expressing for decades on this issue. Now, with that said, I prefer to take a wait-and-see attitude before we get a little more loose with the medical marijuana as it's applied in New York. It's still a Class 1 drug federally. I mean, so as a rules follower and as somebody that understands, the role of government and law and order, these states that are all doing their own thing on marijuana now, the underlying thing is that this is still all illegal at the federal level. The federal government has just chosen to ignore it, turn a blind eye to it, right or wrong. That's what they're doing. The next president may come in and say, well, we're stopping, and all these states that have pressed on with various forms of allowing marijuana use might find themselves in a spot where now they've got to try to undo what they've done. So, I'd rather be conservative and cautious on this issue. Even within the medical marijuana law, as you said, there's a lot of difference in terms of what the federal legislation says and what the state legislation and locally. Robin, I know on record you stated that one of the reasons you'd like to see perhaps recreational marijuana legalized is to devote more resources to things like heroin abuse. Is your position the same as the Green Party's position, or do you have a different position?
I think all Green Party candidates have unique positions on all the issues. First, I'd like to applaud you for voting yes on the Compassionate Care Act. I think that was very bold of you for being a member of the Republican Party to vote yes on that was awesome. Let me clarify my stance on decriminalization. It's strictly decriminalization. And like I said in that forum, and I'm glad you saw that video, decriminalization of addiction. That when people are addicted to a drug, they need help. They don't need to be sitting in a county jail. That being said, the Compassionate Care Act was a good first step, but it needs to grow and it needs to do better. And the Department of Health has now stepped in with the 12-point plan to make it better. One of those things being to include chronic pain in the list of conditions. That, to me, needs to be done because we can treat people that are going to wind up taking opioids with medical marijuana in the first place. And so they don't get addicted to the opioids, the ones that are being prescribed to them. And then when their prescriptions run out, then they wind up in the street looking for heroin. Mm-hmm. So we could actually keep people from getting addicted. And there's research in Massachusetts saying that they're using medical marijuana to get people off of opioids and heroin. So it might actually be an anti-gateway drug or gateway out of harder drugs. So that's why I feel that we need to expand the Compassionate Care Act. Recreational marijuana, yes, I think the first thing we can talk about is the boost to our economy. That Colorado took in $135 million in tax revenue last year, immediately devoted $35 million to school construction. I think New York State could absolutely use a $100 million boost to our coffers, so we can have infrastructure improvements, so we can fully fund education, so we can do all the wonderful things that New Yorkers need to have. So yes, I believe that we should legalize recreational marijuana in New York State because really how many times do you find a constituency that wants to be taxed, that wants to pay more tax? Well, you'll find the marijuana smokers in New York State want to pay tax. They want to pay more tax, and they want to be contributing members of the community. Did I answer the question?
You did. Okay. You did. Thank you. Assemblyman, if you want to respond?
Well, I'm not sure I heard the answer to the question in there about legalizing possession and use of heroin and opiates.
Well,
but
I can answer that, but
sure.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Thank you.
It's a complicated issue. Let's talk on legalizing heroin. Heroin's been legal in England for many years, I think as long as I've been alive. And they don't have the problems that we have here because everyone's registered. Everyone goes to a clinic and gets their heroin, and I think they generally shoot up on the spot where there's doctors around. The problem we're having in New York State is it's a free-for-all. The problem started with overprescribing of opioids by doctors. And they're sending people home with a 30-day script when they only needed 7. And then after 7, they're still taking these pills, and they don't even realize they're becoming addicted because they think they're taking it for pain. And the one thing opioid and heroin does to you is it gives you phantom pain. It makes you think you're sick. It makes you think you're hurting. And you take these pills, and the next thing you know, you're addicted. 30 days afterward, your doctor cuts you off. He says, well, this pain should be gone. There's no reason for you to have these. And they have an addiction, and they go to the street, and they find heroin. I don't think we should be legalizing heroin. I don't think we should be not prosecuting dealers. I think we should prosecute heroin dealers. I think we should prosecute meth labs and people that are making, manufacturing, and distributing these hard drugs. But I don't think we should be prosecuting addicts.
Something if you want to respond to that?
Well, yes, thank you. The Assembly Republican Conference has done extensive work in this area of heroin, and we went around the state as a group, held 7 different forums. I attended and participated in the one in Plattsburgh last fall. We're proud of the work that we did. We met with a lot of law enforcement people that have talked exactly about these issues. We talked with caregivers, experts in the area of substance abuse, addicts, their family members, and we've heard the stories, and they're terrible stories. And this is a medical problem as well, and there's no question about that. But the point that I'd like to make is in all those conferences around the state, and in fact, my own experience traveling around the district, having my own meetings with various constituencies around this, the healthcare providers, the treatment providers, the family members, and the addicts themselves, none of them have said that lightening the restrictions to marijuana or to heroin is a good idea. That is not a finding of our report at all. Our report had a lot of other great suggestions in it that included making access to treatment easier and more automatic and covered by insurance. And I'm proud to say the last couple days of session, those got passed into law. So, and I voted in favor of that. So I think that that was a reasonable step. But again, none of these people that we've been meeting with are saying we need to decriminalize, we need to make it easier to have access to marijuana or any other drug. Sure. They want to stay away from that direction. And these are the people that deal with this problem for a living. Mm-hmm.
This is directly from that report. This is the report you're talking about?
Yep.
We cannot arrest or incarcerate our way out of this problem. So I think that's a clear sign that we need to move this into the healthcare industry and move it out of the law enforcement. And I think that's a clear mandate from the law enforcement saying, we don't want to handle this anymore. This is a medical issue and not a law enforcement issue. So I disagree with you there. I think they have said that we cannot arrest our way out of this.
Well, it's definitely a difficult issue to deal with. I don't know that any of us really have the exact answers, and I appreciate both of you articulating your positions on that, because it certainly is an issue that's not going to go away anytime soon. So let's talk about another issue that's become significant up in the North Country, especially in our waterways, is the environmentally invasive species. There has been some legislation that's been put forward at the state level. We'll start with you, Robin. Do you feel that that's doing the job? Do you think that there's more that needs to be done?
On the environment, the invasive species in our waterways?
Yes.
I think there always more needs to be done. Not an issue I've studied up. I don't know the exact legislation you're talking about, but there always needs to be more needs to be done. I know people are still putting boats in Lake George and still coming out with bad things on their boats, and then they put their boat into Glen Lake or another lake, and it causes a bigger problem. So yes, without having to know the legislation you're specifically talking about, there's always more that needs to be done. And
I know, Assemblyman, there is some legislation that was passed recently, I believe.
There is. In fact, this is an issue that not only am I passionate about, but fortunately I have long experience with, going back long before I was in the Assembly. When I was the Queensbury Town Supervisor, we were working on the Westbrook project at the southern end of Lake George with 3 environmental groups and local government groups to protect that and to start addressing the issue of invasive species. We put money into boat wash stations, and actually Warren County, when I was the chairman of the Warren County Board of Supervisors, Warren County beat the state to the punch on transportation legislation to try to get a handle on the movement of aquatic species, invasives, around our waterways. So Warren County led, but then since then the state of New York has finally adopted some legislation. I'm the ranking minority member on the Environmental Conservation Committee, so I have a very close relationship with the chair and certainly the commissioner of DEC. But when I was town supervisor, we set up a taxing district for Sunnyside Lake, Lake Sunnyside, and Glen Lake, so that those lakes could get their hands around the aquatic species issues they were having predominantly with milfoil. So this is something that I think we need to really look big picture, park-wide. You know, you can't do this one lake at a time. There's thousands of lakes in New York State. It's more important to look at a big picture, park-wide. I was happy that I advocated for, and we were able to get funding dedicated in the budget for aquatics, and specifically there was also some dedicated funding just for Lake George. So this is an important issue because it is our economic treasure as well as an environmental treasure. You know, regardless of why you love our lakes, you know, whether it's because it's an environmental passion, which it should be, or an environmental economic reality, which it is for a lot of communities, you know, it doesn't matter why you want to protect the lake. Protect the lake. And whether it's Lake George or Schroon Lake or Brant Lake or Lake Placid or Mare Lake or Paradox Lake or Eagle Lake or any of the lakes in the district. So it's something that I think we need to continue to fight and put the resources behind, something that I want to continue to press for.
I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about endorsements. You know, endorsements clearly in any campaign are important. Candidates go out and seek them. It's a way for them to solidify their base and seek support in other areas. So we could start with you, Assemblyman. What are some of the groups that are supporting your candidacy?
Well, I agree that, you know, endorsements are an important way to solidify your base. You know, that there's no question. But I'm proud of the variety and the spectrum that my endorsements represent. I'm on 4 ballot lines, so I'm not just on the Republican line. I've also been endorsed by the Conservative Party, the Independence Party, and the Reform Party. But in addition to those, understandably, most people would say, well, Republicans can have support of business groups. And yes, you know, the Farm Bureau Circle of Friends, they've acknowledged my support for farming issues. Unshackle Upstate, which is a large pro-taxpayer, pro-business advocate, gave me a 100% rating. I was one of 8 legislators that got a 100% rating from them. I was endorsed by the NFIB, and I was also endorsed by the Business Council. But the flip side of that is I was also endorsed by 4 labor groups. The PBA of New York State, the New York State Troopers PBA, the NYSET, the largest teachers union in the state. I'm proud to have the teachers support, and the AFL-CIO. So these are not, you know, traditional bailiwicks of Republican candidates. I think I'd like to cap this off by saying that I was endorsed by the New York State League of Conservation Voters. So this is one of the biggest biggest environmental groups, most respected groups in the state. You know, they're proud of the work that I'm doing in the legislature because I've been able to work with the other side of the aisle on environmental issues. Clearly, there's no way to please all 9 of those endorsed groups that I've got endorsements from. They are often in conflict with each other, labor and business. But I think that what it represents is that people see in me somebody that knows how to do the job, gets the job done right, somebody they can work with, and hopefully somebody they feel they can trust. So I'm proud of all the endorsements that I've had, again, not just from traditional Republican you know, stalwarts, but across from perhaps non-traditional sources as well.
Robin?
Well, it's difficult for Greens to get endorsed. I filled out all the same questionnaires that I'm sure Mr. Stec did. The NYSET one, I feel bad about because I didn't want to fill it out until I was on the ballot. I was getting my signatures at the time, and I had it on my desk, and I said, well, as soon as I get on the ballot, I'm going to fill this out. And I got to it, and I was late. And so I got a hold of them. Actually, I emailed them, and I said, you know, can I still fill this out? Oh, absolutely, fill it out. And I think it was the same day that they received it, Mr. Stec got the endorsement. So it's much easier for a career politician to collect endorsements from these groups because he's been, and I'll say, he's been working with them and sometimes working for them for all these years. That's a wonderful thing. I did get one major endorsement just a couple days ago. One of your colleagues, Assemblyman Phil Stec, from Colony or Loudonville.
No relation.
No relation. Yeah, he's got a K. Has endorsed my candidacy. A huge coup for any Green Party member to get a Democratic sitting assemblyman to give him an endorsement. And I saw Phil at that forum at the Desmond, the Mental Health Association forum, and he again expressed how happy he is about what I'm doing and what my platform stands for, and what the Green Party's platform stands for. So I think that in the future, once I take this office, I'm sure in 2 years I'll have a lot more endorsements.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, I want to thank both of you. We're going to take a quick break, and we've talked a lot about the issues facing the 114th Assembly District. After this short break, I'm going to ask each of you to offer up some closing statements to our viewers. Okay? So hang tight. We'll be back in just 1 minute.
There is nothing more important in the election process than for you to know where the candidates stand and what they care about. All the political coverage on Look Media is made possible by the generous support of the companies you see here. Please support them.
Welcome back to this special edition of Beyond the Headlines, Decision 2016. We're just finishing up our debate in the 114th Assembly race, Assemblyman Dan Stec and challenger Robin Barkenhagen. Right now, we're just going to have some closing statements to finish up from each of our candidates, and we will start with Assemblyman Stec.
Thanks, Mike. I'd like to thank you and Look TV and my opponent for the opportunity that we had this morning to speak on the issues about this race. I'm proud of my record of service. Again, I've served for several years in the legislature now, 4 years now, and I haven't been afraid to stand up to the power in Albany. I've challenged the status quo. I'm particularly proud of my work on ethics reform and in particular pension forfeiture for corrupt officials. That's something that I championed for my entire first 4 years in office, and it took all that work and time, unfortunately, to get first passage of constitutional amendment through that would strip corrupt politicians of their pensions that are funded by the taxpayers. So I'm very proud of that work. I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go back next year, make sure that we get second passage of that important legislation so that you, the voters, can vote in favor of that in 2017. But that's only the beginning, and we need to continue our fight on ethics issues, and I am willing to do that, and I'm capable and ready and energetic about doing that. Thank you very much again for having us.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And now Robin Barkenhagen.
Thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. It's wonderful that Greens are given the opportunity to voice our opinion in this forum. I'm running to bring change to Albany, to bring common sense and compromise to a broken system, and to truly represent the will of the people. I believe that I can represent all of the people of the 114th District, red, blue, green, and everyone in between, because I am a Green, and I can sit in the middle of the constituencies and can sit in the middle of the chamber and say, there's a good idea here, there's a good idea here, let's compromise and make it a great idea. So I believe that I have the political gumption in me to do what needs to be done in Albany, to stand up to Governor Cuomo when he needs to be stood up to, and to stand up to the Republicans when they need to be stood up to. I'm not afraid. I may be afraid to ask for contributions, but I'm not afraid to stand up for what is right. So thank you again for this opportunity. I have a lot of great issues that what I'd like to talk about. You can go to my my website, votebarkenhagen.org, and to find out more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Assemblyman Dan Stec and challenger Robin Barkenhagen, for joining me, and thank you for tuning in. I want to remind everyone that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th. In this great democracy that we live in, one of the greatest rights is our ability to vote and elect our leaders. And I want to encourage all of you to exercise that right on Election Day. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Headlines.